Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Brad is engineering the broadcast at GCN. Thank you, Brad. And I'm Vincent Finelli. Let me just tell you what the schedule for the rest of the week is. Today it's Kurt Wilson for 2 hours. Tomorrow, Kathy will be interviewing me about appliance repair. We'll be specifically talking about tips, how to service your appliances. And one thing she has on our list is washing machines, how to fix them. So I'm going to tell you for $30 how you can buy all the parts that you need to have on hand to fix your agitator washer. That's right, $30. No kidding. And then Friday, Bert is going to be interviewing me about how I wire alternating current in the farm and in the farmhouse. Tips that you can use. Things that I do differently. So that's this week. Right now, it is Kurt Wilson. Welcome, Kurt.
Hey, what's happening, Vinny?
Well, I wanted to thank you, Kurt. You said something very, very kind to me. And you called me a couple days ago. And you said, I'm going to paraphrase. You said something like, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're one of the people I care about.
Yeah,
is that true?
Of course. Yeah.
Well, I found that very, very kind that you said that. Opening statement, hey, Vinny, how's it going? Bang, you're one of the people I care about. I thought that was, and the feeling is absolutely mutual. Although we've never met.
I appreciate that.
Well, let me mention this. One of our instructors has been with us for years. She started out as someone who called into the broadcast from Australia. She paid for the call herself, and it was an expensive call. And she would call us, and she would tell us what was happening in Australia. And I liked her so well, I invited her to come on the air and, broadcast with us. And then I liked that so well that, she's become a regular instructor. Her name is Gwyneth Isaacs, and she lives on a 20-acre farm off-grid, totally off-grid. I mean, no AC power from the grid at all. And so she has a solar array, and she has, she catches rain and so forth. And, she has a holding tank that she built. And so she farms the hard way with a hoe, a pick, and a shovel. And, so she raises her own animals and food. And, her transportation was a truck until it stopped working. Now, it's horses, literally. And she fell off the horse. And it was, pretty catastrophic. So, class, if you're wondering about Gwyneth Isaacs, she'll probably be back in a few weeks. Well, 9 broken ribs, 2 fractured vertebrae. She fractured her scapula. She punctured a lung, and she dislocated her hip. She put her hip back in herself, and she's decided that maybe horses aren't the way to go. So she's going to sell the horses. She's in the hospital at the moment. She's been there for the better part of a week. I have a feeling she's going to be there a few more days. She thinks she's going to be back on the air, maybe in a week. I think it's probably going to take a little longer than that because she's really, really banged up and in a lot of pain. So I don't want her to, rush back to the microphone. So I just wanted to mention that. And if you would like to send her an email and send your thoughts to her, just send it to instructor, INSTRUCTOR, at USAPrepares.com. Instructor at USAPREPARES.com. And I've been forwarding them to her post haste. So the ones that we received already, thank you very much. And I want to thank our detractors. Literally, there are a couple detractors who have been beating us up for years on the internet. I mean, literally just bashing us, and finding fault with, pretty much everything we do. And those detractors have come out of the woodwork and sent their thoughts for, quick recovery to Gwyneth Isaacs. And I want to thank you guys for that. I think that's very kind of you to do that. So, when she gets well, you can go back to bashing us. Kurt, so what's happening? What is going on? Where is everybody? Where'd they go?
Today is a very special day. I got to tell you, everybody, this is a very special day today. This is the day my son got his first tooth in 1984. Right?
Yeah. Is there a rest of the story?
No, that's it. That's it. I don't know why everybody is so upset or congratulatory on this day all over the United States. I have no frickin' clue. But as far as we know here in the bunker at Survival Enterprises, we celebrate my son's first tooth.
Well, I please congratulate him for all of us here at USA Prepares. It is a monumentous day. And I'm trying to think of something more monumental than that. And, frankly, I can't.
Yeah, I can't either. So, what the hell? So, have you guys got wet winter yet?
Yeah, well, we've had some frost, and we've had snow, and we've had freezing temperatures in the 20s. Yeah, we have. And I heard that you guys aren't really having much of a winter out there. Is that true?
No, it's kind of freaky, but it's never been quote unquote normal in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. It's the first year, 99, the first year that we were here, and I'm not kidding. We watched the 4th of July fireworks in a snowstorm standing in a half a foot of snow. That was the 4th of July. Okay. 35 years ago, we worked up here, and every morning at 9 a.m. it would rain like hell, and by 9:15 the rain would stop, and by 9:30 everything would be dry. This was during the summer. And then up here, while we're up here, maybe 6 years ago, we had 8 feet of snow one night. And so far, we've had 2 snowstorms that were kind of piddly. They dump about 3 inches, and it's gone by night. We did have a windstorm. Boy, did we have a windstorm. That just came through last week. 70 mile an hour, sustained winds on the pass, 50 mile an hour in town. 500 trees dropped all over the place. People are still without power. Some people are still without power. But thank God there was no snow or ice. So far, the coldest we've gotten is maybe 22 degrees. And that's nothing. That's short sleeve weather.
Well, we've had those gusts of winds here too. And we're in Tornado Alley, so we kind of expected a little bit more. However, when we built our house, I decided that I would buy a couple hundred extra square feet of roof shingles that would be the same dye lot. And I'm gonna have to go up there and put some back on because some of them have flipped off.
I tell you, people don't. People get to say, "I'm going to get my roof done." So they get a roof done, guy goes away, and then some of the shingles, whether they use cedar shingles or asbestos or whatever they use, they never think ahead. Now, we had our roof redone 2 years ago, and I told the guy I wanted to leave me a square of roofing material. So I've got like 20 shingles. They, the ones 3 feet long.
Yeah, 3 tab or 7 tab or 5 tab or architectural. Yeah, the composition shingles, right?
Yeah, so I had him leave me a square of that. So I got about 20 of those sitting downstairs, just in case.
And that's something that I've done for as long as we put roofs on houses, either re-roofing or first roof. That's something that we do. So we buy extra, and the reason, class, is there are dye lots. So what happens is, let's say you get, red or weathered wood or black or white or gray or green or blue, whatever the color may be, if you were to buy them 2 months later, go to the same exact place, if they reordered them, there will be a different dye lot and the shingles will not match. It's as simple as that. They will not match. And you've seen it. You've seen houses and you look and you say, huh, right there in the middle of the roof, there's shingles that don't match. How can that be? Well, that's because one of them or 2 or 5 or 10 were damaged and they bought new ones. But it costs less to buy them all at the same time in the same dye lot. And when we built our house, when I was ordering the roofing materials, I stipulated in the agreement to buy shingles from the supply house that all of them would be the same dye lot. And I looked at every package to make sure that, yep, they're all the same dye lot. Because once the shingles are put on, it's a real pain to change them. So, and you really don't want people walking on your roof unnecessarily, because what happens is those granules, get scraped off by the boots and the sneakers that the guys and gals wear. So once that roof is on, you don't want anybody on it unless you absolutely have to go on it. And you don't want to go on it in the wintertime because that's when they're the most fragile. And you don't want to go on it in the heat of the summer because they are, they'll hit 150 degrees, if they're dark colored.
Now that we're talking about roofing, I got to tell you, the house we're in right now was built in the 70s, early 70s, 71 or 73, I forgot which. And we moved in 99. And within 10 years, I'm looking up the roof, and our house is 1,000 square foot top floor, and then you got a 500 square foot garage, and the peak of the garage was bowing down, and I'm thinking, oh, you know what? I must have too much stuff up in the rafters, because I'd put some sheets of plywood up in the garage on the rafters above, and I could put stuff up there. So we removed all that stuff, and that bowing stayed there. And then a few years later, I decided to get the roof done. And people that come out and looked at the roof, and they said, you got 3 layers of material up there. And I said, really? Yeah. So, well, do you understand how much weight you have on your roof? And I said, well, I don't know. He said, you have about 3 tons on the house.
That's a big deal.
Holy crap. Oh, yeah. Well, when we were getting some heavy snow, my son and I'd be up on the roof scraping it off because we were afraid the damn roof would give way. So they had to make plenty of trips to the dump to get rid of all of those shingles. And then they actually let my roof breathe for a couple of days. And then when they put the new material on, my house was like really, really grateful. That bow disappeared.
Yeah.
That was peak.
The rule of thumb is 3 roofs. That's it. No more, period. Yeah. And, roofs are rated, the structure of a roof. I'm talking not the shingles, but, the wood supporting the roof typically. It's rated in, pounds per square foot, how much it can support, a roof load. And then to that, is considered the snow. How much snow can it handle? And so there are very few flat roofs in areas, for homes that are in a snow area. They are peaked roofs because peaked roofs are stronger. And the higher the peak, the greater the angle, the more snow load they can handle. We'll be right back. Kurt Wilson. Kurt Wilson's with us. Kurt, on the lighter side, do you remember that early computer program called Whack-A-Mole, and what would happen is you see these holes? And so there's a reason why I'm saying this. So for those who haven't seen this class, it's kind of like think of it like manhole covers on your screen, dotted across your screen in a matrix, if you will. And all of a sudden this mole will pop its head up, and your job is to move the mouse pointer right on the mole, click the left hand button on the mouse, and get that mole. And they just keep popping up. Well, I have a communique from one of our class. And this guy, and I'm going to have to paraphrase it. I don't have it in front of me, so let me paraphrase it in my words. So this guy's frosted because he buys and sells things on Craigslist. And for example, I'll use the word Mercedes. So let's say he happens to be looking for a Mercedes car and he goes to his local area, clicks on Craigslist in his local village, and he types in the search word Mercedes. And it comes up with Mercedes. It comes up with Harley Davidson motorcycles. It comes up with, you don't have any money? No problem. You can buy these wheels. And I'm looking right now. There's a company that's Dan the Tire Man. Credit issues, short on cash, no problem. Tires, wheels, and accessories, 0 initial payment. This guy is all over the internet. Okay, Dan the Tire Man. So even though you see him in your local village Craigslist, he's not there. He's somewhere else. And there's another company called Audio City USA, and they sell wheels. And what happens is these guys, along with others, according to, and I see it right on the internet, according to this communique that I've gotten, lifts for cars, every kind of car you can think of. So you're searching for a Mercedes, or I'm just using that as an example. And you find heavy equipment, you'll find restaurant equipment, you'll find lighting for your garage. And what these guys do, and dealers are really good at this, they will say, well, they'll put like a Honda, and a Honda will pop up when you search for Mercedes. And it will say, we also have Mercedes and Lexus and Corvettes and BMWs and every brand, make, and model you can think of. Come see us for any of these also. So when you search for Mercedes, in their listing is every other kind of vehicle you can think of. And also with these wheel guys, they'll say, well, we have wheels from Mercedes and BMW and Jaguar and on and on and on. And they list every size. So they have like roughly, some of them, 5,000 keywords. Don't forget us, because we sell these other sizes as well, and these other brands, Bridgestone, Firestone, Hankook. I mean, the list goes on and on. Well, this guy is frosted. The guy that, from which this communique originated, he's just frosted. So he goes and plays whack-a-mole. And what he does, if he searches for, let's say, Mercedes or BMW, whatever he's looking for, or Mustang, and the ads for wheels and tires and buses and forklifts and whatever, there's a little X in the, last line of the thumbnail for the Craigslist ad. And there's a little X, and it's kind of a grayed out X. And he says you click that, and that flags that ad, and off they go. So what he's suggesting that you do, class, and he asked me to pass the word on, that you take out the trash. So if you happen to be on Craigslist and you are, looking for something, you happen to see all these ads in your way, distracting you from what you're really looking for, just take out the trash by clicking those X's. And some of them,
there's a problem. There's a problem with that. You're only allowed to click, I think, 750.
Oh,
because I do. Yeah, there's a limit, and I do that. It's called keyword spamming, and these guys do that. Right. If you're searching for a glass pack muffler that'll fit a 71 Chevy 350, you're going to find 1,000 responses, and none of them are mufflers. It's just that the guys put it in. They find these words. If you can look at the back end of some of these ads, you'll find there's probably 1,000 keywords in there. And Craigslist doesn't give a damn. You can complain to Craigslist, and these guys get knocked off, and you can't just take them off with one X. They got to have, it's called a flag, and they have to have like 50 to 100 flags. And then that one ad will get bounced off. And then they'll just change the wording a little bit and put it right back up. It's a pain in the butt, and it happens to Craigslist everywhere.
We'll be right back. Kurt Wilson's with us. Kurt, I was just on the internet, maybe a week ago, and I came across this chart. And Zero Hedge has it on their website. And, there's an old saying, talk is cheap. I can tell you that for sure not all talk is cheap, because I'm looking at what Hillary Clinton was paid for some of her speeches. Now, they start around $225,000 per speech. That's a lot for, how long is this speech? Maybe an hour? I don't know how many that is per word, but it's pretty significant. So who are these people who have spent in between 2013 and 2015? What companies were involved in paying her a minimum of $225,000 per speech? I'll just mention a few of them, so you know where the bribes are coming from. Morgan Stanley, Deutsche Bank, Fidelity Investments, Gap Incorporated, Verizon Communications Incorporated, Goldman Sachs Group, the Economic Club of Grand Rapids. Now the Economic Club of Grand Rapids, they have $225,000 to throw around. I guess maybe that's, we put up $225,000 and we get millions back. I guess that's what that's all about. UBS Wealth Management, the American Jewish University, American Society for Clinical Pathology, National Association of Chain Drugstores, Global Business Travel Association, Long Island Association, National Association of Convenience Stores. Again, the Goldman Sachs didn't get it right the first time, so they had her come back. Bethel Synagogue, Jewish United Fund. The Goldman Sachs Group still didn't get it right, so they had her back again. London Drugs, Beaumont Health System, National Association of Realtors, Bank of America, let's see, General Electric. And by the way, General Electric was Thomas Alva Edison's company. It's been rebranded a bunch of times, and ultimately it became General Electric. A&E Television Networks, Xerox, World Affairs Council. Yeah. United Fresh Produce Association. Huh. Well, I guess Hillary really knows a lot about produce. Cisco, Corning, Commercial Real Estate Women Network, Deutsche Bank, again, Qualcomm, the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce, and eBay, and some others. Well, I guess an American Camping Association. Now, American Camping Association liked her $260,000 worth in one speech, and eBay liked her $315,000 worth. So, some paid more. The Massachusetts Conference for Women, I think they got a discount because they were only $205,500. But, to make up for that, Deutsche Bank paid $280,000 and Qualcomm paid $335,000. Maybe it was an hour and a half for
I'll take
Qualcomm.
half of that for 2 hours. My time.
Can you imagine? Kurt, you and I are walking around teaching people for free, and we could have been charging $250,000. So if you add up all this for 2013 through 2015, 21 million. Actually, rounding, $22 million. So it really does. Government,
money laundering.
Yeah. And what do they call these things? Public servants? Isn't that what they call them? Public servants?
Some of them, yeah. No, they're fronts, and that's easy to see. There's a lot of money laundering going on with that kind of stuff. It's like a college in San Francisco wanted to have her talk, and I was a friend of mine was going to that college. He was a teacher, and he said that how it played out was this: she wanted 200,000 blank, whatever. I don't know exactly what it was to speech, and the college doesn't have that, so they simply put a notice out to all their alumni and said, "Look, we need some money for Hillary to speak. So, how much money do you want to donate so you can get a write-off?" And that's what they did. All these people said, "Oh yeah, I'll give you 1,000. I'll give you 2,000. Blah 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 blah." So all these people put in a bunch of money together, and it was a giant write-off. That was one scenario. Another scenario is and this is another one that I saw. A sheik wanted to give Bill Clinton $250,000, but he couldn't do it because there's some rules. There was some kind of a law that he couldn't just hand the money over to him. So instead, he contacted an organization and said, and I don't remember, it was something to do with waterways, water equipment. He said, I'm going to give you $250,000. I want you to have Bill Clinton come and talk, and I want you to give that money to him. So that's called money laundering, is what it is. So those are some of the scenarios, and this happens all over. You and me aren't in this club. You know, this is the club of elites, and that's what we're seeing right now. With the elites have taken over 100%, and now the communist purge is in full existence, and we're seeing it every freaking day, and have been since Trump became president, and the communists went crazy. And those of you out there who think that we have a two-party system in the United States, Republican and Democrats, well, we do have a two-party system. We have conservatives and communists, and that's all we have. There's nothing else there. You have conservatives and you have communists. And the communists now are attacking people right and left. My store, Survival Enterprises, we were attacked. We can't take credit cards anymore. They shut us down. It's a backdoor way of controlling conservatism. And I also had my insurance canceled. My business insurance canceled. I've had it 35 years. Never had a claim, never had a problem. And they canceled it. And I called them up and said, what do you mean canceled? Why? I don't know. They just said cancel. I said, what do you mean you don't know? I got really pissed off, and then I realized what it was. So we just got another company that is a conservative company. We have insurance through that. People are being canceled right and left. They're shutting us down. And this is why, now you heard about Westwood One Radio?
Yeah.
You there? Yeah, you heard about what's going on with them?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah. Tell us about it.
Well, Westwood One is the advertising side of Cumulus Radio, and Mark Levin's on there, and Dan Boning. I don't know how to say his last name, Boningo or whatever. There's a bunch of conservatives on there, and the owner of Westwood One has ordered all of them to stop talking about the stolen election. He's telling them what not to say. And it's not just on that, it's on television, it's on many different radio stations. Fox, as a matter of fact, Fox News, now that they don't have anybody to attack, they've changed their whole lineup. Now they got a bunch of feedy-weedy commie pretenders on Fox News all over the place. And I have some friends of mine who have a business in town, and everything's on the internet. And Yelp, you know what Yelp is?
Yeah, it's a rating app.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
I don't really
Where you
give
rank
a damn.
restaurants, etc.?
Yeah. And he has a restaurant, and all of a sudden, there's 1,000 negative posts on there. Negative reviews. And it's like, where the hell did that come from? Well, that affects how many people want to go in there and eat. See, nowadays, your 5 senses aren't enough. You have to have the 6th sense of reading reviews on the internet. So if you want some good Italian food, you look up Italian food restaurants on Yelp, and they list them, and then you go read the reviews and go, oh, I don't want to eat there. They say that his stuff's all burnt, and he cooks cats. And, it's like asinine. It's happening all over the place. Me, I don't care, because my show's on Global Star 3 network. I'm the Armchair Survivalist, by the way. And the only person that controls me is Todd, my engineer. And he doesn't give a damn. So, and by the way, he plays you during the day. He puts you on the satellite.
Yeah, and I have a feeling. I have a feeling that has something to do with Kurt Wilson. Is that true?
Yes, it is.
Thank you, Kurt. I've talked to Todd Waite over the years. He's the owner of this Global Star Network, and what he does is he takes feeds and sends them up to the satellite for broadcast in like a flood light pattern, in various areas of the world. And, Todd, thank you for doing that. I really appreciate that. And he is a real gentleman. I've talked to him over the years, a number of times. And, how did you convince him to do it? I mean, how did that happen?
Well, see, I have on my website, at armchairsurvivalist.com, I have a chat room there. And you go to the chat room and you can listen to the 24/7 feed of Global Star. And he just puts stuff up there. Usually it's GCN or Scriptures for America that he flows through there. It's to keep it active. It keeps the feed active. And people go there and they sit there all day and just listen to the radio. Well, he was putting on some real boring things, and I have nothing to do with what's being played until it's my time for my show, which is Sundays, 2 to 4 Pacific time. And that's the only time I really care what's on. But I have some listeners, they don't know this. They don't know that I don't control that. They think that I control what's being put on there. And I've had listeners send me emails or call me and say, what the hell do I care about a knitting show? Why would you have something like that on there? So I don't put any of that stuff on. So I got a hold of Todd, and I said, look, let's put some people on that are entertaining and can teach people things. So he goes, okay, fine, who? I said, hey, Vinny, USA Prepares. And he goes, oh, yeah, I know Vinny. I've talked to him. It's funny. So he puts you on for free. But if you want to be put on, he'll charge you.
Well, there used to be a time when we had, a small number of sponsors, and class, here's how this works. So USA Prepares used to have 6 minutes of commercial time for 2 hours of broadcasting. And I could sell that and maybe get a few dollars and turn that back into paying for satellite time. So the idea of USA Prepares was never to make money, but it was just to keep this thing going. So I did that. And, then I decided that, what? Sponsors that's not really the way we should go. And I'll pay for what I can out of my own wallet. And when I can't, I won't. So I was in a point where we eliminated all of our sponsors, took those 6 minutes back for talk time, and I notified our affiliates that, if they were charging us, I couldn't pay them anymore. And you know what? Most of them kept us.
Yep.
Most of them kept us. And thank you so much for affiliates, those who are doing that. Kurt Wilson's with us, the Armchair Survivalist, and website Survival Enterprises. Kurt, many years ago, about a decade ago, we're going to have an expo here in Missouri. And we're thinking, who should the keynote speaker be? Well, Derry Brownfield was someone we thought would be a great keynote speaker. And we were talking to a very large venue in this part of Missouri, and they had a stadium. And they could hold about 8,000 people. Now, that's not as big as, some baseball stadiums, but around here it's pretty big. And so they had associated with that stadium right on the campus, within a short walking distance on the same property. They had an exhibition hall. They had everything that we needed. And so we decided that we would contact some people. Derry Brownfield was willing to do it for free. Oliver North was a consideration. If I remember correctly, the number was $40,000 to have him give one of these short addresses. And Gerald Salente, he was about $15,000. And there was another guy whose name reminds with Ben, first name Ben, B-E-N. That's not his name, but it rhymes with Ben. And so I was on the phone with his people. I didn't talk to this guy. He's a well-known radio guy. He's still on the air. And he doesn't charge at all, this guy. But what he wants you to do, if you want to get his attention, is you have to contribute to his charity, which he controls. And there's a specific amount that you have to contribute to his charity to get him to show up, to talk. And that's $100,000. And to get there, he only travels by jet. And he doesn't like too many other people in the jet, as far as I can tell, because he requires a private jet with 2 pilots, and it has to be a twin-engine jet. So when you talk about these speaking fees, and which is what we've been talking about, it's not just Hillary that does it. There are other people. So if you want to have some, well-recognized name, they can cost a lot of money. And, I talked to Gerald Celente, and I gave him some advice about how to wire his office because he was going to use wireless. And, back then I told him, no, you don't want to use wireless because there can be guys in your, across the street in the parking lot in Kingston, New York, who can listen in. So and tune in and monitor everything you guys are doing. So you want to have it Cat 5e wired, meaning Ethernet wired. So what I'm saying is there are other people who charge an exorbitant amount of money. And I suggest that you take all of this into consideration when you listen to these people. I think $100,000 for, an afternoon, an hour or so on stage is a lot of money. What do you think, Kurt?
People don't do this. They don't pay somebody to come and talk because they want to get some data and some knowledge from this person. It's a prestige thing. And in like the colleges, I went to Stanford. So Stanford would pay somebody to come out and speak, somebody who's very well known and very controversial, and they would pay him an exorbitant amount of money to come out and speak. Well, it's not because anybody gave a damn what this guy's going to say. It's because then everyone will look and say, oh, look who Stanford just brought out to speak. Maybe I had to send my child to Stanford. Stanford's so progressive as that. And this is what it is. It's a prestige thing. Who gives a damn what these guys say?
Well, you're absolutely right. Now, I was, at the time, this was Expo number 1, about 10 years ago, and I was confused. I actually thought that this guy would just love the opportunity to stand in front of, 8,000 plus people and give his message of preparedness and warn the country and prepare the country. I actually thought he would have altruistic, desires and motives. No. It's about money. Mm-hmm. I was really confused. It was a great lesson that I learned firsthand. I mean, I was on the phone with these guys' handlers, and it was great to learn that. It really was. So we decided that we weren't going to do that. Unfortunately, Derry Brownfield passed away. What he did was I contacted him, and he accepted on the phone. And I said, great, you're it. I'm all excited. And he typed up a letter on brown stationery on his IBM Selectric typewriter with a brown ribbon, Derry Brownfield, and the Common Sense Coalition. He was on a bunch of radio stations. He's a farmer from Missouri. Used to raise about 1,000 head of cows, so 10 times bigger than we are. And he was great. I mean, I've been to his studio. Wonderful guy. Well, he typed up this letter to me saying, thanks so much. My wife and I are looking forward to being there. He did that on a Friday, put it in the mail, went home and died. Oh. He was dead the next day. Yep, true story. True story. And do you remember Derry Brownfield?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Pretty good guy. Yep. When we come back, Kurt, I'd like to mention something about the biggest recall in automotive history. 63 million. Think about that. 63 million of these defective devices in cars. It's the biggest recall in the history of the automotive industry. We'll be right back. The Armchair Survivalist. You can look him up on the internet, the Armchair Survivalist. Kurt, we just heard at the top of the hour news that there's a recall. They beat us to it. And that's what I wanted to mention. 63 million defective inflators for airbags. And what can happen? These things have nitroglycerin in them. I'm not exaggerating. And they need to detonate quickly. So there's an explosion in the steering wheel, and it inflates the airbag, and it blows off, the covering of the steering wheel, where you hit the horn, that spot. It's designed to come apart, and the airbag is to prevent your face from planting into the steering wheel and your chest. Well, about 63 million of these, maybe as many as 70 million inflators are defective. So let me just share with you and the class the list of some of these automobile manufacturers that are impacted by these defective Takata, and they are an Asian company, Takata. Takata. They make the airbag inflators. So I can assure you that if you have one of these three manufacturers, you are not affected by the recall, and that would be Lotus. So if you drive a Lotus, you don't have to worry. If you drive a Checker Motors, they used to make cabs, they're out of business. You don't have to worry. And if you drive an American Motors vehicle, you don't have to worry. Other than that, you might be on the list. And let me just go through this list very quickly. So there's probably 10 or 15 different models within each one of these brands. Ready? Here you go. So Acura, Audi, and this is alphabetical order. Acura, Audi, BMW, Cadillac, Chevrolet, Chrysler, Daimler Trucks, Daimler Vans, Dodge Ram, Ferrari, Fisker, Ford, General Motors Corporation, GMC, Honda, Infiniti, Jaguar, Jeep, Land Rover, Lexus, Lincoln, Mazda, McLaren, Mercedes-Benz, Mercury, Mitsubishi, Nissan, Pontiac, Saab, Saturn, Scion, Subaru, Tesla, Toyota, Volkswagen, and that's the majority of the list. That's pretty much everybody, except for Lotus. And they only have like $12 million in sales. They only work on 6 or 7 cars at a time. Their assembly line is like these moving dollies. They put a car in one of these and the guys push it down the assembly line. Literally, I'm not kidding. I've owned a Lotus, and I know of the quality of which they are lacking. And I've never owned a Checker, but I do have 3 American Motors vehicles right here at the farm. So, and they've been out of business for quite some time, since the 1970s. So there you have it. So, Kurt, what we're talking about is a company that has made 63 to 70 million devices that are defective. Can you imagine that? How do you do that?
Yes.
How do you do that?
It's very simple. They manufacture product, and because now you said they're Asian. What country are they in? Are they
these
Japanese?
Guys these are Japanese.
Okay.
Takata, I believe, is Japanese.
They know that they're, and they've already discovered this in court filings. They know that they knew that there was a flaw in it. They knew that it was overpowering certain applications. And what would happen was when it activated, it would blow off pieces of the steering wheel and drive it through somebody's head. So in certain applications, it worked perfectly. In other applications, they had a 75% chance of fracturing the steering column or breaking a piece of the pot metal that was holding the bag, and like shrapnel, throwing it everywhere. They knew this. They didn't care. They're making so much money. Who cares? So it's cheaper for them to pay any court fees, deaths to pay off the family, or do any recalls than it is to revamp everything and start manufacturing them properly. They're not going to do that.
Kurt, we work on cars here at the farm. Our son has a small business, and the locals seem to like his work. He charges probably half of what a shop might charge for the same kind of work, and he stands behind it, and he does a really good job. I'm not bragging, I'm just telling you the truth. And he has something he calls a level 1 service, which is an oil change. And his customers used to complain, what's up? Why does it take you 2 hours to do an oil change? And that's because he would drain the oil when it's hot, take off the oil filter, let it drain. And while it's draining, he would check the brakes. He would check the wheel bearings. He would check the axle bearings. He would check the differential fluid in the back, the front for 4-wheel drive. He would grease all of the suspension parts, check the transmission fluid, top off all, power steering fluid. Check the idlers, the belt tensioners, the belts, the water pump play, the viscous fan. I'm talking about the thermostatically controlled fans on the water pumps. Hey, check all the stuff. And so it would take 2 hours. And one of the things that's come in lately is StabiliTrak. Now, StabiliTrak is this traction control system on trucks, General Motors trucks. And what happens is the light comes on and says, you got to caution, StabiliTrak's not working. And it really upsets the drivers because they don't know what it means. Well, when you work on to fix one of the sensors, of which there are about 200 sensors on a new car, one of the sensors is on the steering wheel shaft. So from the steering wheel, there's a rod that goes downward between the pedals, and that rod has to be disconnected, and the steering wheel has to be partially disassembled in order to do that. We are terrified to work on these darn things because that darn airbag could explode in our faces when we take the steering wheel apart. And so, of course, you disconnect the battery, and it's like I guess the closest thing I can think of is deactivating a landmine in World War II. You know, going through a German minefield and deactivating a landmine. That's what it's like to us. It's darn dangerous. Nobody wants to work on these things. Nobody. Because you can get killed.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I remember. Now, this is before Takata started manufacturing these. I remember years ago when the first airbags came out, and I was witness to an accident in Los Angeles, and this guy was driving an Audi. This is a very expensive car at the time, and this was the top of the line, and somebody had T-boned him and knocked him about 100 feet into a driveway, and he wasn't wearing a seatbelt, because the salesman had told him that these airbags make the car so safe you almost never need to wear a seatbelt anyway. He had at least a dozen ribs broken from the explosion of the airbag, and the fact that he wasn't where the airbag engineers had determined you would be if you were wearing a seatbelt. You follow?
I do. What you're saying is he was probably a little closer than he would normally be.
Yep. Yeah.
And also for short,
half a dozen ribs.
And also for people who are short, okay, in stature, let's say 5 feet tall. Some of them would put a pillow behind their back to move them closer to the steering wheel. That was common back then.
Yeah.
It might even still be common. And because they moved closer, if that airbag deployed, it could kill them because they were, as you said, too close.
Yeah, and that's why they say do not put babies in the front seat of a vehicle. Put them in the back seat because that airbag can kill them.
And also, they need, a lot of times they say, make sure the baby is facing the rear, you know, where you've been rather than where you're going. So make sure you double check all that. Maybe that's changed since I learned about it. But so if you're wondering, class, if your vehicle has been recalled, you can visit NHTSA.gov. That's National Highway Traffic Safety. Let's see. Where is it? I'm trying to find
National Highway Traffic Safety Agency or something. Yeah.
Where'd it go? NHTSA. Those guys. .gov. And look them up and see if you can find your vehicle being recalled. And the likelihood is pretty likely that you are going to find that your car or truck is on the list. And you might want to have it repaired. And they should do it for free. So it's all the major manufacturers, like all of them, literally all of them. That's why I said if you have a Lotus, a Checker, or an American Motors, you're not on the list. But
tens of millions. I'm looking at the website right now. tens of millions of vehicles with these airbags are under recall.
Well, I've seen lots of numbers, and one of them is 63 million, and another one is 70 million, and another one is 5.9 million. Yeah, it's a big deal. So, and you know, there's an old saying, and I've used it when I've taught class, and I've tried to tell our class something that I learned when I became a mechanic for Sears, Roebuck and Company during my after school high school hours, you know, and Saturdays, you know, during my high school last years of high school. And the Sears, Roebuck and Company shop foreman put his arm around me the first day over my shoulder, and he said, "Vinny, remember this, you know, throughout your life. May the job be big or small, do it right or not at all." And then, in contrast to that, it seems like other people think that, well, there's always time to do it right the second time. Well, how much is how much is this costing Takata? Well, they'll make up for it by charging more for the next round, because they're the largest manufacturer of these little buggers. You know, where are you going to get them? And you know, there's another story that's really kind of interesting, that you know, there's so many semiconductors. Oh, by the way, Honda is recalling 1,400,000 vehicles. Now, why are they doing that? Well, there is a problem that the drive shafts may malfunction. Now, why would the drive shafts malfunction? And also, lights are malfunctioning. We've covered this on this class, and we've talked about this, and I'll tell you what it is again. But here it is. The recalls didn't hit until, you know, recently. It's road salt. It's road salt. So where? Well, Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Maryland, Maine, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, and then, you know, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Vermont, Virginia, West Virginia, Wisconsin, and the District of Criminals, and probably Missouri as well. So, Kurt, before I start this topic about why these vehicles are failing regarding wiring and corrosion, would you please tell us how we can listen to Kurt Wilson on the air and get to your website?
Well, you go to you can listen to me anywhere. Just point at something, and it's probably broadcasting me. ArmchairSurvivalist.com. Go to ArmchairSurvivalist.com. Okay, any of the pages there, you scroll down, and it'll tell you. It says other ways to listen. Well, you can listen in my chat room. You can listen on every podcast venue. You can Stitcher, Anchor, iHeartRadio. God, there's over 23 of them. Plus, my son puts me on YouTube. You know, it's funny. I've got hundreds of my shows on YouTube, and only one's ever been taken down. Only one. And it was a show I did. It was titled the Truth Behind Israel and the Jews. And that's the only show that was ever taken down.
Huh. Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I have no idea why.
The only time I got thrown off the air, when I was on the air, is when I did something similar.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm an investigative journalist.
Oh, yeah.
So everything I talk about, I have what's called show notes. And I post them, and people can go to the source of what I'm talking about, so they can't say, oh, he's lying. Because I have proof of everything I say. So there's all kinds of different ways. Obviously, you can listen to me on Global Star 3 satellite, Todd's satellite. And then there's a local number you can call. You'll find all of this stuff at armchairsurvivalist.com. And don't forget, my business is Survival Enterprises, which is survivalenterprises.com. Oh, I have a question for you, Vinny.
There you go. And
yeah. Did you ever meet Karen? Did she ever call in to you?
No.
Okay.
No.
Karen, I've known her for about 20 years. Karen is a ham radio expert, and she knows everything in the world, or she did. She's now passed away a couple months ago, and that's why I wanted to ask you if you knew her. She knew everything about ham radio. She worked with FEMA. She worked every time there was an emergency. She'd be there, and she was an astounding person, because she had been in a fire in the military, which grossly disfigured her, burnt one arm off and half the other. and yet she still functioned. And she was a ham radio expert and a survival and preparedness expert. And she used to call in my show all the time. And just, I know there's a lot of people that listen to me that I tell to listen to you. So if you're listening today, guys, I'm going to have a show this coming Sunday with an interview I did with Karen. It's either 10 or 15 years ago.
Well, that's wonderful.
We've got a big
our ham radio
here.
Expert. Let me look and see how big it is. Give me just a second.
I bet I can tell you why it is, because the windstorm we had.
It's almost 2 seconds. It's almost 2 seconds.
The windstorm we had took out half of the nodes up here, the internet nodes.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So our guy, our ham radio expert, is a gentleman by the name of Gordon West. And he's written many books on how to get your ham license, how to practice the questions and the theory, etc. And he's been on the air with us, a number of times. So Gordon West, if you want to look up his books class. It's very sad about Karen, but it sounds like she was a real trooper. It sounds like her heart was in the right place, and she was doing what you and we do, which is we're trying to get the word out, and it's not a profit motive. It's we want to make sure that as many people who want to pay attention come out the other side of this mess we're in, way better than if they weren't paying attention. That's the plan. Kurt, so about these failures with vehicles, and I'll be talking about some of this tomorrow and Friday as well when I teach. I'm writing a book, Kurt, and it's my unpublished, not available for sale, unorganized book. And it's just things that I've bumped into. There's no plan to sell it, but it's things that I've learned in 68 years and things that I wanted to share, and that's what's in my book, and I'm sharing them on the radio. But when we come back from this bottom of the hour break, I'd like to share with our class and you, Kurt, what some of these corrosion problems are and why and what you need to do about them. And it's a huge problem. It costs the average person about $800 a year. Well, I want to thank one of our class. Yesterday, I happened to mention that it's very confusing. Very confusing, terminology that we're using. There's a restaurant and a motel chain called Howard Johnson's. And, people started calling them years ago Hojos. Hojo. H-O-J-O. And the part that's confusing is now people don't know if they're talking about the restaurant, motel chain, or the White House. So, so I want to thank Terry. I won't use the last name, but Terry sent me an email that says 4 words: beautiful work, comma, thank you, and that was in reference to Hojos. So here's the thing about corrosion. I mentioned that here in the corrupt state of Missouri, the counties and cities are using salt on the roads, and they've been using salt for years, but they've mixed it with beet juice. So this is that waste product that no one seems to know what to do with, but leave it up to the government and an industry to figure out how to sell a product that is typically a waste product to the unsuspecting, generally dumb public. And what they do is they mix this sticky, gooey beet juice with, and that's a byproduct of making sugar, for example. They mix it with road salt, and it becomes sticky and adheres to everything. And that's why you see bridges corroding. That's why your cars are rusting out. And that's why every single Chevrolet 1500, 2500 pickup truck around the year 2004, 5, 6, 7 has rusted out truck beds, rocker panels, brake lines, etc. Right? Because the salt doesn't wash off. It sticks all summer, all winter, and throughout the life of the vehicle until you've got nothing left but rust. Well, it has damaged drive shafts. It's damaged drive shaft bearings. It's gotten into the front suspension, the rear suspension. It's gotten into the brakes. It's rusted brake lines, wires, etc. And then in trailers. And the reason we know this and the reason we've been reporting on this is because we have to fix it here at the farm. So what happens if you drive in snowy or icy conditions and road salt has been applied, you're destroying your vehicle slowly. And it'll take, several months. But we have seen every single trailer, every one, bar none, every trailer we've seen has corrosion in the wiring connections, except for the ones that we solder. And that's how we fix them. We strip the wires back, apply liquid rosin onto the connection, sand it so it's bright and shiny, solder it, use heat shrink tubing to protect it from corrosion again. But what happens with trailers, and this is pretty much all trailers, the manufacturers of trailers like it quick and easy, and they use these things that are known by several different names. They're known as quick splice connectors. They're known as Scotch lock connectors. And what they are is typically they're blue, and they have this little metal piece. You put the wires in it, and you don't have to strip the wires. You just crimp it with a pair of pliers, and by the action of this, a slot in two slots in this metal piece going through the connector, through the insulation of the wire, it makes a connection. But it's not a good connection. And it's not a permanent connection. In my opinion, it's a temporary connection, and they all seem to fail. Now, what are these Scotch lock type connectors, where are they used? Well, they're used in the brake wiring. They're used in the wiring for the turn signals, the brake lights, the electric brakes, okay, and the side marker lights. So we find that there's all kinds of corrosion problems. So we don't use those. We take the wires apart, strip them, solder them, and then we use heat shrink tubing, and then we put electrical tape over that. And when I use electrical tape, I cut the electrical tape so it's half the width that it would normally be. Black electrical tape is 3/4 of an inch wide. I will slice it down the middle. Let's say a 6-inch long piece or a 4-inch long piece. I'll slice it so it's 2 pieces of 3/8 of an inch, because I can stretch it even tighter, and it makes a more waterproof connection. So that's what I do. But what I'm trying to tell you, class, is that I believe that most of the vehicles that are in Missouri, well, let's say 25% at least, in my opinion, are defective in some way because of corrosion. Kurt, do you have any opinions on what I've just said?
Yeah, I've gone through it, and usually because I've towed trailers for decades and decades, and I end up doing my own wiring at the vehicle, at the truck, right? So I want to put a hitch on, and I want to put a plug on. So I got to do all this wiring and everything. A couple times when I didn't need to put on a permanent, like a 9-point plug or something like that, or a 7-point plug, I would just do a little adapter for the U-Haul type 4-prong plugs, and I would use those those little whatever you call those things.
Scotch locks.
Scotch lock. Yeah, I've got like 1,000 of those things. I got at the yard sale for $1. So wow. I would use those, and sure as hell, within a year, there's a short. And we don't have salt like you do, but it doesn't matter because they move, they shake, they move, and you do get water in there. And then what happens is that water freezes and then it expands. And I put these things on really well and then wrap the hell out of them with tape, and I still end up having to do repairs on it. So I do pretty much what you say, that you guys do. I strip it down, put it together, I solder it. I don't use heat seal, those plastic tubes. I use liquid rubber.
Okay, I'm glad you mentioned that. So, class, what Kurt is talking about is liquid electrical tape.
Yeah, I got some right here.
Yeah, liquid electrical tape. It comes in. It's multicultural. You can get it in red and yellow. You can get it. You can get it in all the colors that you probably want. Okay, and it comes in a jar. A couple ounces, small jar, like what you might get. Vitamins in. That size jar. Couple ounces, and it has a brush inside the cap. And what you do is, if the temperature is, let's say, 50 degrees or, higher, you can, once you make your good connection and you want to seal moisture out, you brush this on, and it will harden. It'll be somewhat pliable when you're done, but it will keep that connection from attracting moisture. And it's a great way to go.
There is a prerequisite to that. And now you're going to, you're going to understand this because this is apropos for many industries. It's all in the prep, right? And that's the key. It's all in the prep. It's like when you're going to paint a car, you got to sand it, and then you got to cheesecloth it off, wipe it down, right? So the metal can take what you're going to put on. And same thing with wires. If you do a slap job, a shade tree mechanic type job, where you just grab two wires, twist them together, hit them with a soldering gun, and then put this stuff on, it's going to, because there is motion. You know, when you're driving, things shake and move. It's going to separate eventually. So what you have to do is you have to wipe the wires down that you're going to put this stuff on. And I just use alcohol, rubbing alcohol. I wash, make sure the wires are clean, you know, no mud or anything like that. And then I literally will wipe them down with alcohol and a cotton ball. Then I'll solder them. And then when it's ready to have the liquid electrical tape put on, I then wipe them down again, let them dry, and then I coat it really well. And then after that's dried, then I go back and I double check it to make sure that it worked right. You know, I tell people on my show, life is a participation sport. You can't just do something and walk away. You know, you don't just lock your front door and then walk away without testing to see if it's locked. And it's the same thing when you're doing these kind of electrical repairs. After you've done it, you have to test it. You know, pull on it a little bit, make sure the thing is going to function fine. And there's nothing going to hurt you if you get some zip ties underneath of your vehicle and you pull those wires up and you tie them to the frame or somewhere else so they're not hanging down. I see this all the time. These guys think they know what they're doing, and you're following them on a freeway, and they got wires hanging under their car. And you know what's going to happen. It's going to hook up.
You're absolutely right. And class, let me share something with you. I bought something that I didn't know about until maybe, 5, 6, 8 years ago. It's called liquid rosin. The kind of solder that you use for radio work and electricity is called electrical solder or rosin core solder. The kind you absolutely do not use is called acid core solder. And the idea is there's a flux that will clean as you solder. And some solder has embedded in the center of the solder. Think of it like solder as a tube, but the center of the tube would be the flux. And it's kind of like a paste. Well, you can get a liquid and with a pinpoint kind of a needle coming out of it and a little 30 to 50 mil squeezable bottle. And so I bought a couple of these, and they come with a little cap, and it's about $10 for two of them. And when I work on wiring for trucks and so forth, I find that as much as I sand the connections clean, the old wiring just really doesn't want to accept solder as well as I'd like it to. So I sand them clean, use a brass brush or a steel brush that has no grease on it, on the bare wire. And then I twist the wires the way I want them to be twisted before I solder them, put on the heat shrink tubing, etc. before soldering. And then I apply a drop or two of this liquid, rosin flux, drop. And it really works well. So you can buy that on eBay if you'd like. And it works very well. What we're talking about, class, is doing it the right way so that you won't have problems later. Because the last thing you want to do is step on your brake on your truck with a trailer and have your brake lights not come on, and the guy who is using cruise control behind you, who's dancing to the music, not paying enough attention, driving into the back of your trailer. You don't want that to happen. So the way to prevent that is to make sure that you make sure the connections are really good. And one thing that I do, Kurt, is I use dielectric grease on the bulbs, on the base of the bulbs, to prevent moisture from corroding the bulb socket connection. And I use dielectric grease on the trailer 5-way, 6-way, or 7-way connectors as well to prevent them from corroding where the trailer connects to the truck. Do you use dielectric grease as well?
Oh, yeah. And I'll tell you where I did it. Most people would never even think of this. Well, you're not most people, so you'll probably think of it. But I put a new roof on a 35-foot motorhome. I mean, I put a new roof on, which means you tear off the old one. You tear off the air conditioner. You pull off all the molding. You take all the lights off, the running light. You take everything off. And when I put the roof back on, I want to put new lights up there. And you have like 6 in the front, 6 in the back. And these are running lights along the edges so that you don't make a mistake when you're driving someplace and go where it's too low for you. And these are brand new lights. I took them apart and put dielectric grease on each bulb, brand new bulb, put it on there. So these bulbs are going to last whoever bought the motorhome 20 years without ever rusting out.
Yep. We do the same thing. I'll tell you a little bit about oxygen sensors when we come back. Kurt Wilson's with us, the Armchair Survivalist. So, Kurt, I'm all excited. Today, right after the broadcast, in about, maybe 7 minutes, I'm going to run out of the studio and go into the automotive shop, and I'm going to work on my brand new truck. I bought a brand new truck. And in 5 years, it will be an antique. So it's a 2001 Chevy pickup truck. And I'm going to replace one of the oxygen sensors on it. It has 4. And one of them, according to our scanner, says it's defective. Well, I believe it might be defective. And here's what I do. I'm going to take them out. I'm going to take all 4 of them out, and I'm going to compare them because I bought this truck used. And I'm going to heat each one of them up on the workbench with a propane torch. Now, an oxygen sensor should generate about 1 volt of electricity at 600 or 700 degrees. So I'm going to heat it up and see if it works. I'm literally going to test them independently with a volt ohm meter. I'm going to set it to the volt scale, and I'm going to measure the voltage. And I'm going to watch the rise of the voltage up to 1 volt as it's supposed to. And then I'm going to take the flame off and see if the voltage drops, and I'm going to heat it up again. And I'm going to watch it because that's what it's supposed to do. That's kind of the way I work on vehicles. I determine what the problem is. And then before I replace parts, I test the parts to make sure that the one I'm putting in is good. So that's one of the reasons why it takes me forever. And people think I'm retarded because it takes me forever. But that's the way I do it. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is that these things get stuck. Now, I don't know if I'll ever have to replace one or not after I work on it, but I might. And I use something called copper coat. Now, this copper coat is kind of a paste. Think of it like the consistency of toothpaste, but it's microscopic copper flakes combined with a oil. And I put it on the threads of spark plugs and lug nuts and things like that. Things, nuts and bolts and fasteners that I'm going to be taking apart. Number one, it prevents corrosion, to a great extent. It conducts electricity to a great extent, and it lets me take it apart later. Much, much easier without it being, rusted on. So I just wanted to share with you kind of the way I do things. Any comments?
Yeah. This is a true story. So the doctors invented this remote controlled pacemaker. Goes in the guy's chest. And a friend of mine works in a hospital told me this story. And it is true. So this guy gets this remote controlled pacemaker in his chest. And the cool thing about it, I don't mean remote controlled, you can control it. I mean remote reading. It's okay. So the doctor has this little tablet that he can look and see what's going on in this guy's chest. And it shows his heart rate, his blood pressure, and it shows different chemical analysis and things. And it's so cool. You get within 10 feet of somebody, and you can tell how their heart is actually going. So the guy comes into the doctor's office and says, "Doctor, I don't feel good at all. I'm very nauseous. I have a headache. My chest hurts." And the doctor whips out this tablet and says, "Well, let me take a look, Mr. Williams." Says, "Just hold on a second." And he looks at this tablet and goes, "No, everything looks, Mr. Williams." And the guy's laying dead on the ground. So what happens, and that's an example of what's going on in this technology that we have to suffer under. These people, mechanics, to put a car in there, put it on a meter and go, well, there's nothing wrong with it. And the car is leaking oil, leaking transmission fluid, water's pouring out of the radiator, and the 8 cylinder is only running on 7 cylinders. but the electronics are saying that everything's fine. And that's why what you said is the smartest thing that I have heard in a long time. Okay, so your meter says you put a scanner on there and it says, oh, what the oxygen sensor number 4 is bad. Well, you want to find out if it's bad. And what they'll do at a shop is just replace it. They won't even check it. And then they'll charge you $287 for a $20 part.
If you're lucky.
Yeah, if you're lucky. So you need, people have to double check. You got to participate in your life and what's going on. And you're going to do mechanics, you learn how to do diagnostics. That's the important thing. And then after you've nailed it down, then you take a look at it and make sure. My son, we've been smelling antifreeze. We go to yard sales, during the summer. And I'm smelling, I get in the car, I go, Eric, I can smell antifreeze. There's antifreeze, damn it. There's nothing leaking down there inside. I open and look under the hood, and there's nothing leaking there. Well, when you smell antifreeze and you don't see anything leaking, it's usually because it's happening on a hot part of the motor, and the antifreeze is evaporating before it can do anything. So we take it to the dealership every time and say, look, there's antifreeze leaking somewhere. There's antifreeze leaking somewhere. And they're continuing to say, well, no, we got nothing on the meter here. And we did a pressure check, and we did this, and we did that. The last time we go into the Subaru dealership, and I'm telling them the same thing, and the mechanic goes, well, why don't you show me what's going on? So we go out where the car is, the hood's up, the engine's running, and the guy looks, they go, yeah, I can smell something, but I don't see a leak. And I said, what's that on your foot? And there was a couple drops of antifreeze on his foot.
Yeah. Because his foot wasn't as hot as the engine, right?
Yeah. Well, these people rely on their electronics, not their intelligence.
Kurt, I want to thank you. We've never met, but I got to tell you, we are like brothers. We think very much the same. Thanks so much for being with us. I'm looking forward to being on again and again and again and again with you. Survival Enterprises, se1.us, the website, or the Armchair Survivalist. Thanks so much, Kurt.